So let's begin the latch lock training video. So in the upper right hand corner, most likely you will see a number that will represent the inventory number of the lock you are about to install on a specific unit. Okay, so now that you've opened up the box, you can see inside here we have the lock housing, the lock itself, and then you have a couple boxes here with your deadbolt, and there's some screws and batteries in here, and we'll open these up and show you exactly what you've got. So when you open up the box, this is what you will find inside. You will see the lock hub housing here, which we'll open in a minute. You'll see a couple of screws here that will connect the lock to the housing, some batteries which will go inside here, the lock itself. Here you have your deadbolt assembly, you have your deadbolt, you have 4 mounting screws, which you will only need 2 of them. There's a couple extra. You'll need the, and then these are these strike plates, which you'll want to install on the existing wall for the deadbolt to go into. And then there's a couple extra mounting screws here for you know, extra long if you need it. You shouldn't need those. And of course the deadbolt itself. Okay, so now we have the lock hub housing. I've taken it apart here. So now next step is we want to open that cover here, and then we can go ahead and install our batteries. That'll be kind of the first step here to get this thing ready. Okay, now the lock hub housing will be ready to install on the door, and then we won't need this for a little while. All right, so our next step here would be to take the existing hardware off of the door so we can replace it with the latch locks. Okay, now that the previous hardware is removed from the door, you can prepare it to install the latch lock. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you need to grab your deadbolt for the latch lock. You need to locate where it says up here. Make sure it is facing up. And then when you install the latch lock, it must be open. So the deadbolt must be open in the locked position to install the latch lock properly. So then you will go ahead and place this into the door. Okay. Once that's in there, make sure it's lined up, make sure it fits. If the door is if the hole is a little further back, another 1/3 of an inch or so, you can rotate the housing here and it will extend the deadbolt a little further. Some doors, there's a little bit more distance here. So if you need to do that, go ahead. Just make sure you keep it facing up, okay? Once you have that in the door, you take 2 of your deadbolt screws here and go ahead and screw in the deadbolt into the door. I don't typically install that all the way yet. I keep it just a little loose if I need to. That way, as the lock housing slides into the door and through the deadbolt, it can provide for a little bit of leeway and help you install it a little easier. The next screws you will need will be these 2 black screws with the blue at the bottom and the longer housing screw here. You're going to need these to connect both sides of the lock to one another as you install the lock on the door. Okay, so here's a little bit more information, a little visualization to kind of give you an idea of the left and right-handed doors, and then the screws on the latch lock that you'll need to remove depending on which one of those it is. So obviously right here, this is what it's going to look like when you get the lock initially, and then this is what it's going to look like after you remove one of the relevant screws here. So if you decide that you have a left-handed door, which is a door that swings open to the left side, you would remove the R screw, and vice versa. If you have a door that opens up to the right side, you would remove the L screw. So you want to remove the opposite screw for which handed door you decide is at the unit you're at. Okay, so a very important step in this process now is you're going to determine whether the door is a right or left-handed door. So to determine that, you will open the door and see which way it swings open. And depending on whether it is swinging open to the left or to the right, that will that will affect which screw you remove from the inside of the lock here. You see an L and an R here. So for a left-handed door, you would remove the R screw and vice versa. So if you determine the door is a left-handed door or a right-handed door, you would remove the opposite screw for that. So we have determined that the door we're using today is a left-handed door, so we would remove the R screw. So these screws are a little delicate, so be careful unscrewing those. Use your P1 screwdriver, your small screwdriver Phillips head, and loosen that up and take that out. So you'll see I have now removed that, and we are able to continue with installing the lock. Okay, now you're ready to install the lock on the door. So you have the lock itself, and you will need the lock housing. So let me turn this way a little bit, turn our door. So as you will see, you will need to take the lock and install it through the door. This cord must go above the deadbolt, and then you'll see this this metal pole here will need to go through the deadbolt housing here, and then the lock will line up and continue through the door like that. Okay, now you have the front of the lock on the door. It's time to install the lock hub housing. So you will take this piece now. You will need to take this cord, and it will need to go through this hole here to the other side of the lock housing. Okay, so once you bring that through there, you'll need to now line this up with that there, with the bolt turning mechanism, and slide that through, and then line it up, and you can then slide it through and connect the housing to the door itself. So also this post here will need to go through that post on the deadbolt lock. So line that up, may take a little maneuvering there, pull this through, okay, and then your next step here will be to take your screws. There's 3 of them you'll need here. You will need this long silver screw here will go through the top, connecting to the front of the lock. And then you will need the 2 black mounting screws here, which will go through these 2 holes at the bottom to connect the lock housing to the front of the lock. Okay. So you will want to, excuse me, it may take you a minute, kind of a little bit of finagling to line it up and begin to be able to screw these in. There we go. Once you are able to screw these in all the way, okay, your next step here will be to take the power cord here. You will notice there is a white arrow facing down, which will kind of give you an idea of which direction it needs to be. And then you will push this down into the pronged connector. And once you have done that, the lock is essentially ready to go. You can now, it will be powered on, as you can see. Once you have installed the lock on the door, it is time to put the cover back on. So you can now press this on here. Okay, once that is in place, you can put the cover back on. So you want to make sure you have this thing so it's the inside of the cover here. This little notch here is up and down, vertical, which will allow this to be parallel, going the same way as your deadbolt lock. You may need to line it up, line it up a little bit on there. Okay, it'll slide on, and then you can screw the cover into place. Okay, once you have screwed the cover into place, you can manually lock and unlock the door if you need to, just to kind of test it. Okay, our lock works. And now we can do one final test on the lock itself. So the last thing to do here, of course, is you will need to make sure you have installed the strike plate on the wall facing the deadbolt, and make sure everything is good and lined up. And then you will need to use the Latch Manager app to test unlock the door from here.